9, 8.
You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
So an elderly woman has always wanted a parrot. And now that her husband has passed on and her kids have all moved on, she's decided it's time to get a parrot. And she heads out to a pet store and goes to the owner and says, "Yes, I'd like to see your parrots." And the owner says, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we only have one, and I don't think that would be appropriate for you." She's like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, he's previously owned, and the former owner taught him nothing but curse words." She goes, "Oh, I'm sure that's fine." He says, "No, ma'am, seriously, this is one foul-mouthed fowl. You do not want this bird." And she says, "Young man, I raised 3 young boys, got them through high school, off to college, and into the world. If I can handle that, I can take care of a simple foul-mouthed parrot." And he says, "Look, let me show you. I've got some turtle doves. I got some others." She's like, "No, I want a parrot. And if you're not going to sell me a parrot, I will take my business elsewhere." And he's like, "You know what? All right, fine. I'll sell you the parrot." And he she gets a cage for it and puts the cover on it and takes it home, puts it on a little stand, takes the cover off, and the first thing out of his mouth is a curse word. And the woman's a little shocked by it, but she's like, "All right." She reaches in the cage and takes the bird and puts it in the freezer for 10 seconds. Then she takes it back out. She puts it back in the cage and says, "Now, have we learned our lesson?" And the bird immediately says another curse word. And the woman goes, "All right, fine." Takes the bird, sticks it back in the freezer for 30 seconds this time. After that, takes the bird back out, puts it back in the cage, says, "Now, have we learned our lesson?" And the bird looks at her and goes, Yeah, lady, I learned my lesson, but you got to tell me, what the hell did the chicken do?" Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is Thursday, December 21st, I believe, and this is our last episode before the holidays. Monday is Christmas. I hope everybody is ready for the holidays. I apologize for not having the show last week. As many of you know, I've been dealing with some leg injuries and some infections that kind of go and come and go. And it's just been a big fight on that. And it came back last week, and it's still kind of kicking my butt right now. But I didn't want to miss the last show before Christmas, so I am here. We got a few things to talk about, and then, we'll lead you into the rest of the day. Jay says, "I'm just wondering if she put her boys in the freezer." It's always a possibility. If you ever read my Grimm fairy tale story about the 3 blind mice, you'll know that I think elderly people can be very evil. Just saying. So, all right, the show's a little different today. We've got a couple topics. We got 2 news stories. There really hasn't been a lot of big news. We got 2 news stories to cover. We've got some thoughts on the Doctor Who 60th anniversary special and how it ties into a character from the 50th anniversary special. And then we're going to do a deep dive into Maxwell Lord, a character that's just been cast in the DCU. Sean Gunn will be playing it. So let's go ahead and hit the two big news stories we got. The first of which has to do with Warner Brothers. And that is we learned last night that Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav sat down with Paramount Global Chief Executive Bob Bakish to talk about merging. Now, the reports say it was all rather preliminary, as Sherry Redstone, the CEO of Paramount's controlling shareholder, National Amusement, appears to be kind of on a bit of a listening tour. She wants to see what she can get for things if she decides to sell part or all of her company. Now, Redstone, after spending years holding her family empire together, has become open to offers for National Amusements and for Paramount's assets for suitors, including Skydance and Redbird Capital. Now, while not in the meeting, Redstone did have a separate conversation with Zaslav this week, where the role of broadcast network CBS in a potential future deal was a major topic. Now, Warner Brothers is always trying to keep up with Disney, and Disney, of course, owns ABC. So for them to own CBS would put them on par again. And Universal, of course, owns NBC, or NBC owns Universal. So having that network outlet along with the streaming service and stuff like that would be good. Lost my place. Warner Brothers Discovery would be prevented from entering into a transaction, though, until April because of a 2-year lockup period that was put into place after the merger between Warner Media and Discovery. So they can't do anything until April. Now, why would Warner Brothers do this? Well, there's a few IPs that they would pick up by doing this, including The Addams Family, which is having a resurgence with Wednesday, Mission Impossible, which always does well in the theaters, Paranormal Activity, Friday the 13th, something called Star Trek, Top Gun, which was one of the biggest grossing films of 2 years ago, the G.I. Joe films, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films. So I could see this being a big deal for Warner Brothers if they decided to move forward with it. Now, the other big news story, and this leads into just Star Trek, you say? I think I've heard of it. Yeah, it's a little franchise. I think Lucille Ball had something to do with it. So, all right, we need to discuss Jonathan Majors. A New York jury found Majors guilty of reckless assault in the 3rd degree and guilty of harassment. Now, the verdict was reached by a 6-person jury after roughly over 4 hours of deliberation spread across 3 days. Sentencing is set for February 6th. Now, the charges, even though they're technically a misdemeanor and a violation, can carry up to a 1-year sentence in prison. On 2 other charges, he was found not guilty of intentional assault in the 3rd degree and not guilty on aggravated harassment in the 2nd degree. Now, Major's lawyers have made it clear, though, that they plan on appealing the verdict. And one of the things they may appeal on is the fact that there were some tapes and stuff that were originally kept out of the trial, and then something happened during cross-examination, and the judge let them in, and they were originally left out because they would be highly prejudicial against Majors, and I can't believe that they didn't play a part in this. So there are at least grounds that they can run towards. Will it work? Don't know. It was a split decision on the jury, which I'm not sure. All of this sounds very strange to me because it doesn't sound like a normal court case where you have to be found, unanimously guilty. So, yeah. Now, shortly after, a studio rep confirmed that Marvel Studios has decided to not move forward with Majors in the MCU. Majors played mega villain He Who Remains, aka Kang the Conqueror, aka Victor Timely, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4 and into Phase 5. He debuted as the character during Season 1 of Loki in 2021, then continued on in Season 2 this year, as well as the February movie Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, Kang was plotted to be the big bad during the MCU's Phase 5 and 6, with the character getting his own movie, Avengers Kang Dynasty, scheduled for May 1st, 2026. That movie recently saw its director, Shang-Chi's Destin Daniel Cretton, exit due to his busy dance card and on other Marvel projects. It's to be decided in regards whether Marvel keeps the Kang character intact while recasting the part with another actor. Michael Waldron was recently tapped to write Avengers Kang Dynasty. This was after he was already put on Avengers Secret Wars, so he's handling both of the upcoming Avengers movie. Now, he was the showrunner on Season 1 of Loki, and he was brought aboard to give the Avengers movie a kind of a fresh take given the situation with Majors. The Season 2 finale of Loki kind of left it up in the air of exactly what's going on with Kang the Conqueror and his variants. So there's a lot of things Marvel could do at this point. They could recast, or they could move away from the character. Now, it seems like they've put a lot of effort into the character. And just moving away from him seems to not be the way Marvel usually works. They have recasted when necessary. They recasted Terrence Howard for Don Cheadle. They recasted Ed Norton with Mark Ruffalo. They recasted Cassie Lang even. So they're not afraid to recast. They don't like to. They like to stick, dance with who brung you, as they say. So, and that's probably why they waited until the verdict actually came in. Plus Disney had a lot of feedback or blowback for having fired Johnny Depp off of Pirates of the Caribbean before the trial even started with Amber Heard. So it's obvious they were going to be a lot more cautious this time. It says, do you think they'll recast Kang or move on to Doom? I don't necessarily think they'll move on to Doom. But I think they'll recast. I think it's set up for them to recast with the fact that variants can look like anybody. I could see them doing it subtly, trying to find an actor who not only looks like Majors, but can also act on that level, which may not be an easy find. Or they could do a dramatic shift and get somebody completely different. What if they went with Ki Hung Kwang for Ouroboros from Loki? Because he also created the TVA. And since Victor Timely was no longer in Loki Season 2, Victor Timely never gets the handbook, so he can't create things. So maybe someone else becomes Kang. So I think there's a lot of potential there to recast rather than replace. Plus, do you really want to use Doctor Doom in an Avengers movie when you're starting to bring the Fantastic Four out? Now, I don't want them to use Doctor Doom in the first Fantastic Four movie. I want them to establish the Fantastic Four and then use Doctor Doom in the second one. But I want them to save it for a Fantastic Four movie. That makes more sense. So, yeah, Ed says there's enough different versions of Kang they could easily recast. And like I said, with the way Loki Season 2 ended, it could just make sense that someone else ends up picking up the mantle of Kang, like he's a Nexus being that has to exist, like the Scarlet Witch does. Somebody was going to be Kang, whether it was Victor Timely or ends up being somebody else. Nathaniel Richards, which is the original name. So I could see it twisting around. Or they could just keep it and just put in a new actor and just, move forward like they did with Don Cheadle and just, it's me, get over it line that he said in Iron Man 2, which worked fine. So, my preference would be recasting. I would like them to finish up with Kang. Finish the multiverse the way it is. Get through the stories. Finish telling. Because I have a feeling, and the way Marvel tends to work is once you get all the pieces, they start looking even better. So things that people may not be as big of fans of now, once all the pieces fall into place, people may be more open to going forward. So, but again, online, there is just an absolute ton of speculation on what's happening. There's a bunch of people talking about different actors that could be take over the role. There are people doing comedic little bits showing Robert Downey Jr. from Tropical Thunder in the role, which would be funny. Yeah, I saw somebody else say Terrence Howard as Kang would be hilarious. There's a lot of possibilities they could do with that without recasting the character. Without replacing the character. Because again, you've laid all this groundwork. It's all out there. Now bring it home. Just put a different actor in. And we've been dealing with recastings for decades. I mean, how many James Bonds have we had? Nobody gets confused because suddenly Daniel Craig is James Bond when they went to go see Pierce Brosnan. Or nobody gets confused when soap operas swap out actors. They just do the announcement overhead. Today, the part of Michael Quartermain will be played by Nathan Fillion. And that's a real one, by the way. I'm not sure if it remembers Michael Quartermain. I remember it was one of the Quartermains. Nathan Fillion was on General Hospital, or All My Children, for a while. And that's how I was introduced to Nathan Fillion, as he just walked in as one of the Quartermains. So yeah, I think it would be better for them to just recast and move forward. But I think the biggest problem right now is that they're still keeping quiet. Yes, they came out and they said, we're not working with majors anymore, but they did it through a spokesperson. And I feel like this is something that Kevin Feige should have come out and said. I think it's time for Kevin Feige to come out and alleviate some fears, give an idea of what's happening going forward, and control the narrative. And that's, again, my biggest problem with Marvel and DC is they let the internet control the narrative. Gunn is a little better about it because he'll get out there and just squash rumors. And Feige isn't as good with it. Feige could hire somebody just to squash rumors. I'd be happy to take that job. Kevin, give me a call. I will literally sit online 8 hours a day, scanning for BS stories about Marvel and posting that they're not true. Completely control the narrative. Because I think you need to do that, because your fans are getting worked up over things that are pipe dreams. Somebody comes out with the idea of, the Young Avengers are going to be the next movie they're working on. Well, where is that source? Who's the source? Well, insiders. What insiders? How often are they right? Do they work at Marvel? Or is it somebody who knows somebody who knew somebody who once worked on a costume department with somebody who's working on, So they need to start controlling the narrative better. And I think that will start setting expectations better. I mean, let's look at Aquaman right now. Aquaman could have been a big movie. It was $1.15 billion success for the first film. Now we have the second film with most of the cast coming back, same directors, same writers. It should be another bankable $500 million easy, at least, just for people who like the first movie coming back in. But they're already dealing with the Amber Heard hatred. And then you got the fact that the DCEU is ending, that nobody knows what's happening to some of the members. It's so up in the air of who's staying and who's going. The fact that this is the last DCEU movie, at least maybe after this, like in the new year, Gunn could start laying down this is specifics what's happening. And I think he needs to, because again, we don't know, is Jason Momoa out at DC? Is he staying as Aquaman? Is he coming back as Lobo? What's going on? There's all these rumors. And until they start controlling the narrative, these online sites are going to give the narrative and people are going to buy in because they get excited about it. But also, these narratives that are also so negative that you're starting off with these movies getting such bad talk before they even get in the theaters. But it doesn't help when they don't do good in the theaters either. Let's look at this weekend. You got a few things you can watch this weekend. Okay? You've got the Wonka movie, 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not bad. The Iron Claw, the wrestling movie, that's an 88%. So if you're a wrestler, that sounds like it's going to be a good movie for you. Migration, the animated movie, 73%. Romantic comedy, Anyone But You is at 63%. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the big blockbuster superhero movie that ends the year, is coming in at 39%. So you're not going to get word of mouth. You didn't have a world premiere. You're really just kind of putting this out there and hoping nobody steps in it, is literally what's happening with this movie. But if you think that's bad, let's look at streaming. Let's say you don't want to go to the theater. You just want to stay home. Well, Maestro's streaming, that's at an 80%. Dr. Death is on Peacock at 86%. You don't have Peacock? What about Disney? Percy Jackson and the Olympians, that's a new series over on Disney. That's at 96%. First 2 episodes dropped of that. What, better than 96%? Second season of Reacher dropped. 3 episodes, another one tonight, tomorrow. It's at 100% rating. People are loving Jack Reacher. Or also releasing tonight at about 6 or 7 o'clock, depending on which coast you're on or whatever, Rebel Moon from Zack Snyder. And that is currently getting a 24% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's with 88 reviews. So it's not like 3 people came in and said, oh, it sucks. No, a lot of people came in and said, oh, it sucks. Now, the audience score, and that's usually where Zack Snyder gets saved, is because all of his followers rush in. They raise up the audience score. It's at 72%, which is kind of low for a Zack Snyder movie. Normally he gets, the fan part of it usually gets a little higher, but I don't know. It seems like there's been just so much negative talk on everything that it's hard for these theaters or these studios to make any money back, because by the time the movie gets out there, everybody hates it. So, all right. Let's go ahead. We'll take our first break. And when we come back, we will talk about Doctor Who and then Maxwell Lord. Be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
There's a comic book universe on the streets of Cleveland. Hero Tomorrow Comics is debuting
Violante, the Undead.
Get the new issue or the entire acclaimed library live on Kickstarter.
I'm coming for you, Cleveland.
Details at clevelandsuperhero.com.
Live from New York. What? Oh, Sorry, live from Cleveland? It's Friday night? It's Friday Night Live! With Nancy McCann. And Ricky. And sometimes Carlos. And featuring boxes and boxes of rare comics. Unique collectibles. Lots of smiles and conversations with new friends. Friday Night Live with Comics Unlimited. Friday night from 9 to 11 on The Experience.
You, girl. Yeah, I figured with the commercial at the end there, JD was talking about the band Screaming Trees, right? That's what you're going for, JD? Yeah, I lived through the grunge era. It wasn't pretty. Hey, Kenneth, good to see you. By the way, hello, Ed. I hope you guys are ready for the holidays. Got all your Christmas shopping done, all your meal stuff prepped, all your baking done, and everything else. All right. I was not, but I should have. Yeah. See, I thought you were going Screaming Trees there, man. I really did. And the fact that I not only remembered Screaming Trees, but I remembered their song, it's kind of scary. They didn't have a lot of hits. That had to be 93, 94 that came out. Anyway, I'm dating myself here. All right, let's go on to the Doctor Who special. Now, this is not the Christmas special, which will air Monday. Monday. Wow, I got that right by accident. I'm talking about the 60th anniversary special. And there's one thing that happened in it that really caught my attention. And that was, and spoilers for anybody who have not watched the Doctor Who thing. You want to put the little spoiler thing up there? Thank you, JD. The new Doctor didn't regenerate. He did what they call bigenerate, which is a brand new thing. Now, first thing, it's you have to remember that none of the Doctors, well, most of the Doctor's regenerations were not normal. The second Doctor was forced to regenerate from Patrick Troughton into John Pertwee. The fourth Doctor had this weird Watcher guy that ended up being the next Doctor, which is Peter Davison. So Tom Baker saw his future Doctor walking around before coming in. And then, and David Tennant went on like a road trip before he transformed. And then, I had her name a minute ago. The 13th Doctor, before becoming the 14th Doctor, went back to being David Tennant, which that's never been done. Oftentimes we get a face we've seen before. Peter, I think it's Colin Baker had appeared in the series before he became the Doctor. Peter Capaldi appeared in the famous episode Fires of Rome as the family that the Doctor decides to save before becoming the Doctor later on. So that makes sense. But for him to become David Tennant again was kind of weird. So, and then they bi-generated, splitting into two, into Ncuti Gatwa, and left David Tennant there. That set up something. At least in my mind, it set up something. Do you guys remember the 50th anniversary? This was back when Matt Smith was still the Doctor. They brought David Tennant back, and they brought in John Hurt to be the War Doctor. And he's the Doctor that took over from Paul McGann before Christopher Eccleston took over. He was the Doctor. Well, Paul McGann was supposed to be the Doctor for a long time, from the Fox TV movie until the Day of the Doctor, or the Night of the Doctor. And then the War Doctor came in to deal with the Dalek Gallifrey War. Well, in that episode, there was a cameo by Tom Baker. And he was introduced as a character called the Curator. Now, the Curator ran this museum where this painting called Gallifrey Stands exists. And this is where they hid Gallifrey. How they saved it was put it in the picture. Well, this Curator said that he was retired. Well, no, what happened was Matt Smith is sitting there and is told that the Curator wants to talk to him. So David Tennant goes off, John Hurt goes off, leaving Matt Smith there alone. And he sits there, Matt Smith is looking at the painting going, I could be a curator. I would be the great curator. I could retire and curate for this museum. And then in the background you hear, I think you just might. And that's when Smith gets up, turns around and sees Tom Baker. And he looks very knowingly and goes, I never forget a face. And then we see Tom Baker finally, he says, I know you don't. And sometimes you might want to revisit a few, but just the old favorites. And so you get the idea that the Curator is the Doctor, but this might be how the Doctor ends his life, which is neat. It was a neat little setup. Great. The problem is, I don't think they're ever going to retire the Doctor. It's been going on 60 some odd years. It's going to be a juggernaut. And even if somebody shuts it down for a while, they'll just refurbish it, put a new coat of paint on, and put somebody else out there. But what if splitting Tennant and Ncuti into two basically makes Tennant the Curator? He's retired now. He's living on Earth with the Noble family, Noble Tyler family, whatever it is. Or not Tyler, whatever the last name is. What that does is that sets up a couple things. Now, before we go any further into what it sets up, I should give you a little background on the Curator, because yeah, he appeared there, but they've also used him in some audiobooks as well. So you get the initial appearance in, this was the history I got on the Curator. The Curator was an elderly form of the Doctor who retired from his adventuring ways to become the humble curator of the Undergallery. There was only one curator, however. His form varied. And this information comes from the audiobook Crossed Lines. And the audiobooks are considered canon. He chose to take on the appearance of former incarnations that had been, including the fourth, which is what we saw on the Day of the Doctor. The sixth was in the audiobook Cross Lines, and the 11th in the audiobook The Keys of Baker Street. He suggested to the 11th Doctor that his choice was to revisit just the old faces. Now, each of the curator's aspects had something to do with the personality of the original. For example, the curator who resembled the Sixth Doctor preferred a more pragmatic, direct approach, whereas the curator who took on the Fourth Doctor's appearance was far more cryptic and more gentler in the presence of others. This were evolutions of their original personalities with wisdom from their intervening centuries and subsequent regenerations, eventually helping them to become better versions of themselves. Even so, they were essentially of one mind, making decisions as one individual, even if they upheld them in different manners. In the audiobook Cross Lines, Lost Property, and The Kings to Baker Street show this. When giving him the name the curator, he was asked if he had a number. The curator said yes, but it's extraordinarily high, mistakenly believing he was being asked his incarnation number rather than his phone number. And that was from Lost Property. Now, that's the only part that's a fly in the ointment, in that this is David Tennant's character in the specials was the 14th Doctor. So the curator would be the 14th Doctor, unless he counts every change as he goes through them. But what this allows, if they want, is they can move forward with Ncuti Gatwa and doing a regular Doctor Who series, and then they could do specials with the curator Doctor and bring back different actors. Maybe they want to do something with David Bradley as the first Doctor again. Maybe they want to do something with David Tennant again, or Matt Smith, or Paul McGann. There's been rumors of Paul McGann getting to do more stories. The tough one would be Christopher Eccleston, because he has said at a recent convention that he would love to come back to Doctor Who as long as they fired Russell T Davies, and he had about 4 other names who are all currently running the show. So I don't think they're going to fire them anytime soon. But maybe if they pitched, okay, you're going to go over here, you're going to do this special, and it's with none of them, they're not going to be part of it, maybe he'd come back. You get Peter Capaldi to come back. You can get, why can I not think of the female Doctor's name? Help me out, JD. That's going to bug me. But so there's that possibility they could do a lot of these little specials and stuff and then explain where the character comes from, but still continue forward with the Doctor as well. And eventually he takes the name the curator. He doesn't have to take it early on. He can take it later on. Jodie Whittaker, thank you. Could not come up with that to save my life. And you'd think I would, because my sister-in-law's name is Jodie. So that's what I'm thinking with the specials. So that doesn't really, other than how the Doctors regenerate, that doesn't really spoil the specials. But also it seems like the BBC may be hedging their bets a little bit, because they are trying something new here with an openly gay person of color as the Doctor. And where doesn't bother me at all. I thought his first appearance was awesome, and I look forward to the Christmas special. There are going to be some people who might have an issue with that. And maybe they want to do both. I don't know. You know, some of the old guard at the BBC may just want to play it safe. Who knows? But Jodie Whittaker did fine. And I think Ncuti Gatwa is going to do great. So I have no problem with him. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to take our second break, and when we come back, I will give you a little history on Maxwell Lord now that it looks like he's going to be part of the DCU. We'll be right back.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Symphonic verses, Nocturne's romance. A song of romanticized darkness, dreaming death by sleep.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. I hope you all are having a good holiday season. Looking forward to Christmas. And remember to stick around. We have What's in the Box. We have the comic book Beardies. And we have Sketch Up with Mog and Mel, and far too many people to mention. But it is a full house tonight. But I will mention an artist that I grew up reading. Bill Mouse is going to be on the show, creator of Nera X and a few other books. So you definitely want to check out SketchUp tonight. All right, so let's get on to Maxwell Lord. Now, Maxwell Lord the Fourth first appeared in Justice League #1 in May of 1987 and was created by Keith Giffen, J.M. Matisse. I know he's got a way to pronounce the name, and I don't know it, and Kevin Maguire. Lord was originally introduced as a shrewd and powerful businessman who was an ally of and was influential in the formation of the Justice League International, which I'm just going to refer to as the Justice League going forward. But he later developed an adversarial role against Wonder Woman in the Justice League. He has appeared in live action twice so far. First played by Peter Facinelli in the first season of Supergirl, which was airing on CBS before the show moved to the second season on the CW and eventually became part of the Arrowverse. We would then see Lord again as the big bad in the Wonder Woman 1984 opposite of Gal Gadot, played by Pedro Pascal. Now, they played the characters very differently. Peter Facinelli played him more like Lex Luthor. He was kind of that show's stand-in for Lex, and eventually they took him out and they brought in Lana Luthor, Luthor's sister. While Pedro Pascal is actually closer to how Max Lord was in the comics, more of a con man. So, now the word is that James Gunn has cast his brother Sean Gunn in the role. So I don't think it's going to be a huge role, but he's supposed to be appearing in Superman Legacy. Now, mind you, this has not been officially confirmed. Now, the source of this was Deadline, which has a pretty good track record. Usually Deadline gets it right, but it hasn't come from Gunn or Warner Brothers itself. So take it with a little pinch of salt. Don't need a big handful, just a little pinch of salt. Now, this will be the fourth character Sean Gunn will be playing in the new universe, being put together by James Gunn and Peter Safran. See, Sean has already portrayed Weasel and cameoed as Calendar Man in James Gunn's Suicide Squad. And he's been cast as the voice of G.I. Robot in the upcoming animated Creature Commandos, which will also feature him as Weasel once more. And James Gunn has said that basically if you voice a character, then you're going to play the live action version. Now, I realize that G.I. Robot and Weasel are both CGI characters, so he's just voicing different characters. But still, he's already been Calendar Man as well, and now he gets to play Maxwell Lord. Now, the biggest thing about the character is whether he's a misguided businessman with questionable morals or an outright supervillain. Really depends on who's writing the character. Now, James Gunn has said that casting him as a villain is wrong, meaning he's more likely to follow the early appearances of the character rather than the later ones. Now, later on, he gets psychic abilities and kills a beloved hero, which, yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, so let's get into the history of Maxwell Lord. Lord's father was a good man who tried to use his wealth to help people and be a good example for his son. But when Max was 16, his father committed suicide after he had discovered that his company had produced a highly carcinogenic product that killed many people, and he couldn't live with the guilt. Now, Max's mother tried to keep him on the path that his father had set and pointed out the heroes in the world as a good role model. And this led Max to come up with the plan of putting back together the Justice League that at that point had broken apart after the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, originally Lord did all this kind of under somewhat control of an AI computer that was created by Metron of the New Gods. He's the guy that flies around in a little floating chair. Now, the plan was to set up the worldwide peacekeeping organization, but it was later retconned into that the computer, Metron's computer, had actually been taken over by the villainous computer program Kilgore. But it's discovered that Lord had already had plans to take over the League and probably would have pursued it regardless. His ruthlessness is demonstrated when he enlists a disturbed terrorist as a villain for the League to defeat to help bring them together. This resulted in the man's death, and Lord would later rebel against the computer and destroy it. So those are early days from Justice League International. Now, after that, Lord is shown as more of an amoral businessman than a true villain, at times struggling with his conscience and even developing heroic qualities of his own. Like many people during the Invasion crossover event, Lord got gifted superpowers when a gene bomb was exploded by alien invaders. God, comics sometimes. Now, this granted Lord the ability to mind control others, but it came with he had to do it with great difficulty. He had to really push to make it happen. Now, he goes through a lot of weird stuff at this point, being shot, going in a coma, being taken over by the villain Dream Slayer, getting a brain tumor and dying. But that doesn't keep an interesting character down in comics, of course. His mind gets downloaded into a cyborg called Lord Havoc by Kilgore, which leads Lord to try to rebuild his original body. Or at least that's what they claim, and we'll get back to that. Now, we move all the way forward to Infinite Crisis. And in the Countdown to Infinite Crisis issue, it's revealed that Lord is no longer a cyborg. Ta-da! And he has his abilities back. It's retconned here that he's always been a criminal mastermind who's worked to gather information on superheroes and sabotage the Justice League to make them as ineffectual as possible. When all of this is discovered by Ted Kord, aka the Blue Beetle, Lord gives him a chance to join him in his plans, because Lord actually likes Kord. When Kord refuses, Lord shoots him in the head and kills him. And from there, he's given control over the Batman's Brother Eye satellite system by Alexander Luthor Jr., a alternate reality son of Lex Luthor. Again, comics. And Lord uses it and nanotechnology to turn humans into the army of Omax. Hey, Phil. Lord then uses his ability to trick Superman into brutally beating up Batman. And then going after Wonder Woman by making Superman think that Wonder Woman is Doomsday and Doomsday's just killed Lois Lane. Now, Wonder Woman knows she can't defeat Superman. So what she does is she tracks down Lord and uses the magic lasso to compel him to release Superman. But Lord flat out tells her, look, as soon as you take this rope off me, I'm going to do it again and again and again. So with no choice, she snapped Lord's neck, killing him. But the thing is that Lord had this being broadcasted by the Brother Eye Network. It went worldwide, and this destroyed her reputation and her friendship with Superman and Batman, basically destroying the Trinity. Now, remember I talked about him suddenly being human again when he was supposed to be a cyborg? Well, this is how it happened. Dan DiDio admitted that they originally passed on Lord for Infinite Crisis because he'd been turned into a cyborg. But then they kept going to other characters and other characters and other characters, and none of them worked as well as Maxwell Lord. And they kept coming back to him. So then they decided, well, let's ask two important questions. One, did anybody read the series where Lord became a cyborg? And they looked at sales numbers and they went, no, not really. And they said, two, did anyone like him becoming a cyborg? And everybody in the meeting went, no, not really. So they decided to go, I don't see it. I don't see it. He never became a cyborg. Didn't happen. And suddenly we got human again. Now, the whole thing about him rebuilding the body came up in like a minor fix retcon. But that's pretty much what they did. Now, from there, the character would appear in various ways. But none of them really changing Lord significantly other than bringing him back to life. And this was usually done through either the rebirths, time travel, just whatever ways they do it. They rebirth the system the comics every 5 years, and suddenly everybody's back again. So he's back, I think, somewhere out there. At one point, Booster Gold used time travel to go to save Blue Beetle, therefore making it so Max didn't kill Cord, and so Lord was still alive. But that turned out that Cord needed to die for things to work out. It was all time travel, right? But I think we've covered the important stuff, the stuff that might actually get used in the movie. I think he's just going to be like, maybe the fact is we're getting this weird group of heroes in the Superman movie. We're getting Guy Gardner, we're getting Metamorpho, we're getting Hawk Girl, and we're getting Mr. Terrific. And I could see if that team is being led by Maxwell Lord, and that they're kind of cannon fodder in the series to bring Superman in. That would be my thought. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to have all these heroes in a Superman movie. So, but that's where I think they're going, because we're also going to get the Authority. There's talk of other villains. It's going to be interesting to see what Gunn actually does and pulls off. So, all right. So that's the history of Max Lord, some background on the curator, and why I think they finally set that character up. That's talking about Jonathan Majors and the Warner Brothers potential merger with Paramount. I think that's a pretty good day. I think we're going to wrap it up there. That's all the material that I had put together for the show. I will be back next week. We'll do, I don't know if we'll do the news on Tuesday, but we'll definitely be back on Thursday of next week, and we'll figure it out from there. But hope you guys all have a great holiday. Thank you, Ed. Forming a yarn gang. I love it. So that is awesome, man. Yeah, I'm working on a baby blanket right now for somebody. So I'm trying to get it done over the holidays because I need to give it to them by February. So I got to hurry up on this one. So, all right, guys. Thank you again. Kenneth, Phil, Ed, JD, everybody else. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Whatever you celebrate, I hope it is amazing. You have fun times with family and friends, and it's also a safe holiday for you. So, and we will see you on the other side. Good night, everybody.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.